components in this area. Cost and availability of healthcare, political and policy environment, sustainability of agriculture, attracting and retaining young people, protect water resources, cost of available energy. So all of these here are key elements that we will be able to have a significant impact and sort of shape the future of these components in the future. So essentially, we took the main two themes that emerged from the previous slide, and we found that entrepreneurial and responsive community environment was one major category that sort of compiled a lot of the other components into, and providing and protecting physical resources, cost and available of energy, cost and availability of healthcare, protect water resources, land use policies, as well as sustainability of agriculture. These are just different characteristics of this theme. And on the top here, you can see new leadership developed for the entrepreneurial and responsive community, political and policy environment, availability of a skilled workforce. So essentially what we did with these two themes then is we mapped them out on a larger axis and came up with 4 different plausible scenarios. So what would happen if there was an increase in providing and protecting physical resource and a decrease in entrepreneurial and responsive community environment? This emerged as scenario A. Scenario B being an increase in entrepreneurial and responsive community, as well as an increase in providing and protecting physical resources. Scenario D would be a decrease in both of the axes, as well as scenario C being a decrease in providing and protecting physical resources and an increase in entrepreneurial and responsive community environment. So developing the 4 plausible scenarios. The stakeholders were asked to sort of play out these scenarios. What would happen in 10, 20, 30 years looking at the triple bottom line being the social, economic, and environmental impacts. So taking those into consideration, and with the direction of the entrepreneurial as well as the protection of the environment, if those were to increase or to decrease, or vice versa, how would Dunn County look in the next 10, 20, and 30 years? They looked at how the key sets of drivers will shape the future. So with that mentality, in that rationale, they were able to predict different characteristics. Scenario A being the vintage village. So this would be an increase in providing providing environmental and a decrease in entrepreneurial and community support. Predictable characteristics being environment in good health and protected, attractive for elderly and tourists, but lack of opportunity for youth. Businesses attracted by physical resources, but lack of social skilled workforce. Stagnation and conservative leadership, less open and tolerant community, resist new ideas as well as change. Scenario B being an increase in the entrepreneurial and economic support, as well as an increase in protecting the environment, was identified as Destination Dunn. And the stakeholders came up with these different names. They thought that these names gave the best representation for the plausible scenario. In predictable characteristics, you can see engaged citizens and strong leadership, open and welcoming community, strong focus on sustainable development, strong collaborative approach, good healthcare, and workforce development. Scenario C, identified and labeled as boom to gloom. Predictable characteristics being unplanned rapid growth. Sort of a lot of industry and infrastructure is brought in, is developed, but then intensive development along transportation corridor with urban sprawl in the countryside. Environmental degradation begins to occur with more pollution and loss of farming land and less open public space. So you have a large boom in rather the economy and a lot of industry, but then again with not paying close attention to protecting the environment, several consequences will emerge from that. Large companies begin to dominate industry sectors, and areas start to become less attractive for new businesses, families, as well as young people in the county. Scenario D was identified as snooze, you lose, and this was a decrease in the economic support and entrepreneurial support, as well as environmental and natural resource support. Predictable characteristics being poor decisions, seeing the environment degraded and sold off for any development, lack of public funding and decay of infrastructure, roads, health, education all suffer, increased community fragmentation, crime, drug use, social unrest increases, agriculture declines, and water is polluted. These are just 4 possible scenarios that could play out for the future of Dunn County if different attention was focused on either one of those axes. So to recap, the 4 plausible scenarios for the future: vintage village, snooze you lose, boom to gloom, and destination done. So you might ask yourself, what does this scenario planning tell us about our future choices in the direction of Dunn County? These are some bullets that you can sort of reflect back on and think to yourself, you know, which scenario do you think the community of Dunn County should strive towards? You know, which community or which scenario do you think I can be a part of, or I'd like to see for the future of Dunn County? Moving to the next slide, you can see that, you know, what action steps do you think are going to be critical as we move towards creating our preferred future? So we want to instill a sense of, you know, creativity and just to brainstorm several different ideas that you might possibly have. You know, what are some critical or key point action steps that you can take to help the future of Dunn County? And what role do you think you or your group can play to help make this a reality? Once again, this is something that you can reflect back on. We thank you for your input and appreciate your patience. Thank you.